Hello again. It's been a week. This is another episode, podcast, taping, a recording of Along the Watchtower. I am LM Walker, your host, and this is my podcast where, we talk about anything and everything, and I just kind of spew my brains out about it. That's literally what this is. Analysis and rhetoric aside, that's all this is, and that's all I encourage anyone and everyone to do. Really, at any point in your life, as long as it's construct. Well, hopefully it's constructive. It's not like I insist that you be you, and if only it's constructive, if only it's beneficial, or if only it doesn't undermine anyone else. I would encourage that be the case. Before we get to that, today is Monday, March 29th. My signature, hacking into the mic, 2021. I actually, when I'm gonna pivot, the point is like you should always. I would rather a monster be a monster so that I know who I'm dealing with than have the two-faced, dishonest. Right, the whole thing for me is to let your, not that I would want it to surface and hurt myself or others, but I want to know you for who you are. I want to know who I'm dealing with. And if I'm dealing with a monster, I want to know that so that I know not to deal with you. It's you know what I mean? And so the only way to do that is for you to be genuine. But I want to pivot because I actually, so I obviously, I've been on hiatus for those listeners and viewers who I thought were like, two or three. I looked over, I had 27 subscribers. I had no idea. And that's my fault. I wasn't paying attention. I dropped the ball, and I apologize. But wow, I honestly didn't really expect any subscribers, or very many listeners or viewers, and I was okay with that. The reality for me was to have just to utilize the ability again to express myself however I see fit, because in my heart of hearts I know that I'm not aiming to undermine or hurt anybody. I'm simply giving my commentary. So all that gesticulating and whatnot aside, thank you for being a listener. Let me try to get the mic out of the way there. Thank you for being a viewer. Um, I really, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it. There's no way for me to convey, besides my cheesing, to convey my thanks. I appreciate it. Um, excuse me. Uh, a lot has happened since I paused, and actually, it's been kind of an off and on thing for the past couple of weeks now. The reality is that I work a lot, and so I kind of had a decision to make as far as my personal life went. Uh, I was dedicating a lot of it prior to shaping up the show and trying to figure out how to do this more effectively. And I was also trying to learn how to be a better retail investor. I've been investing for almost a year now, and I chose the latter. The latter it's besides it being more profitable, it allows me the means to be more constructive in all my other endeavors. However, that obviously requires me to engage in a much more full, a much more dedicated fashion, and so that's taken up really all of my spare time, and that's the reality. I'm trying to build a better future for myself, and I'm trying to uh, really, build the foundation from which I can further things, further avenues like this. So bear with me as I continue to learn and get better, and in all my endeavors, including this one, as I'm trying to get the mic out of the way. I just feel like it's in the way. It's like the eye line. Obviously, listeners are just like, well, what's happening? The thing's just all over the place. But anyway, a lot has happened in my absence, and still trying to deal with the mic. And we will just go over it briefly. I feel like I'm breathing on it now. Uh, I mean, okay, so five staffers were fired over past weed use, even though even though the White House were okay with it. And here's just like a little caveat. I actually did a show on. I attempted to do a show on Tuesday, and I went through and I did half of it, and then I something happened, and I went through and I did like almost the full other half hour, and before I realized that I wasn't recording. So I just wanted to express that on air, I guess you would say. I did try last week, and I was like, you know what? Maybe it's just not right. It's not the time. So yes, I am recording. Obviously, I'm looking, but back to the recap monologue. Um, it just goes to show you the hypocrisy, and this is every administration. It's nothing new. It's not something I'm just pointing out to the Biden administration and saying, oh, they're hypocrites, as if I'm some sort of wayfair, Republican. The reality is, like, as I've always expressed, following a politician, a political party, or a person is always going to be dangerous and tenuous at best, and will lead to zealotry at worst. Follow your principles. Follow your own policy. Not a person, not a politician, not a political party. A lot of those P's. Anyway, we have new guidelines for COVID vaccinated people. I'm not going to go over that. I actually ended up reading that on air, and it took like 15 minutes to go through because there were a lot of caveats. Like, you can, if you're an at risk but you're vaccinated, you can see your kids, but not others that are like my age, like 30 something. If they're not vaccinated, but you can see children if they're not vaccinated. Things like that. Like, oh, you can be in public areas, but you still should wear masks and da 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 da. But if you're in a group of a certain number and you guys are vaccinated, then you guys don't have to wear your mask. Stuff like that. I'm not reading that shit. I'm not reading it again, I should say. What else? You know what? Let me give you a little shot here. What's happening? Whoopsies. Nope, that's not it either. Let's see if I can fix this. All right, technical issues as always. In America, COVID vaccine eligibility is a crazy quilt of state rules, and this was just a piece just on the different regulations that are happening. Actually, we'll have an update on that. 30-year-olds are supposed to be able to be vaccinated soon. Let me see something here. Yeah, 30-year-olds are supposed to be able to be vaccinated on Tuesday. So, the timeline is getting shorter, and that's because we're heading into May. By May, everyone's supposed to be able to get it. So stuff like that has been happening. Interestingly enough, the EU, the US, and the UK and Canada has targeted China officials over the Uyghur abuses cases. Uh, what's fascinating to me is that while they are, I guess, pursuing this, they still are working with and encouraging Chinese expansionism, and I've always been confused. And here's the thing: I understand that from a diplomatic perspective, you can't just simply cease all ties and contacts and have a complete cessation of everything you're doing. But this has been going on for some time, like decades, and they've known about this for decades, and it all just seems like theater, and it's exhausting to just like read it and to kind of feel the lack of momentum or awareness brought to it. But that happened. Uh, and then we get into local stuff. Donald Trump, no longer President Donald Trump, he's been going around and supporting people. Yay. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters. It matters, and perhaps I'll cover it later. But probably not. But just I've talked about this ad nauseum. The Republican Party is deeply fractured, probably into thirds at this point, between Trumpers, sort of hawkish, contemporary, like hawk. I don't want to say. We'll call them run-of-the-mill conservatives, and then the entrenched establishment Republicans like good old Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. And so, the problem here is that there's no way, there's not a single solitary chance that he's going away anytime soon However, the caveat to that is that he probably, I don't think at this time will run for president, at least in 2020 or in 2024. So we have that. I think as at least right now as it stands, because he likes to be the maneuver. He likes to cause the trouble without taking any of the heat. And that's exactly the position he's in right now, to garner support, wield that support against political opponents, and kind of sit back and say, well, dude, I'm a private citizen. I can do whatever the fuck I want to. So I think he's relishing that right now. Excuse me. So, with the Cuomo business, I was just gonna because it's one thing after another thing after another thing after another thing. It is endless. It is endless. Um, what was the latest thing? Because he's had like 6 people come out about sexual harassment. He got caught with the basically pay for play with the New York like nursing home association. They basically donate, not basically, they donated millions to his campaign. To which he then introduced legislation that they wrote that would absolve them and prohibit any sort of legal action taken against their negligence in allowing infected elderly back into nursing homes, which then killed a bunch of nursing home people, which the Cuomo administration then lied about the numbers of. In the meantime, he's writing a tell-all book. There's talk of him running for president. He's on CNN palling around with his brother. Fucking people. Or I'm just looking up to see if there's anything new. I feel like there was something that recently took place. Like in the last 48 hours, there's a new thing. But there's that. And so, of course, he is probably going to be able to ride it out, but not going to seek re-election. And so, there's people are coming out of the woodwork in an attempt to try and challenge him. And one of these guys was Tom Reed, but unfortunately, he got pegged. And I think this is because either of the network and the capability of Governor Cuomo, or of the entrenchments that he's been able to establish within the Democratic Party. But Reed was quickly taken out here. Representative Tom Reed will not run for governor or re-election next year. So not only will he not run for governor to challenge Cuomo, but he won't even run for re-election. He's complete. That's what I mean. The party has looked at him sideways because of his action. But what ended up happening is that I guess some information came out about. It's always that they never push you out openly. They let things come out about you that then force you to remove yourself. But apparently he accepts full responsibility for inappropriate behavior involving a lobbyist. The 6-term Republican Congress member he unhooked a bra and touched a thigh of a lobbyist, Nicolette Davis. So he just, wow, these guys are just unbelievable. Yeah, and so we are going to start with something that we kind of already started. But we're going to start with something that I have not talked about in some time, and that is aliens, my friend. We have not spoken of aliens in some time. I don't know. We spoke about it briefly when the monoliths came out, but we haven't really spoken about it since. And there's a lot happening in the world other than the possibility of extraterrestrial life. So we go down rabbit holes within gravity wells within rabbit holes, and on the other side we have Sidney Powell getting sued and then immediately backtracking. But in the meantime, let's take a look at the UFOs. A former intelligence official says an upcoming government report will detail difficult to explain UFO sightings. Now, they're called unknown aerial phenomena, UAPs, at this point, I believe. I know what your listeners and viewers are just like, what are you doing? The whole thing for me has nothing necessarily to do directly with extraterrestrial life, more than it does the determined and ceaseless efforts of the United States government, unlike any other government, at least in the Western world, right, to simultaneously conduct ongoing investigations that last decades, such as Project Blue Book. Although I think Project Blue Book was closed, but it was the first one that took place in the 50s after Roswell, and then they continued to conduct investigations into UFO sightings and aerial phenomena up until this very day, while simultaneously withholding almost any and all evidence and findings that are discovered. And so we get the trickles of information about what's going on, and they are confronted, and it is brought up, and they cannot confirm or deny, and then and here's the thing for me. The thing for me is this: the likelihood of it being extraterrestrials is neither here nor there. That's another conversation altogether. There's a Fermi paradox. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. It is. That's another. That's just gonna go down a tangent. But here's the thing for me: it is secrecy that interests me. Secrecy interests me. So more than outside of the realm of extraterrestrials, what kind of technologies are we seeing here that are not being expressed, explained, or disseminated? And then secondly, maybe almost as importantly, is why? Why is it that there is this ceaseless effort to prevent information from coming out, even though, they have to know that people retire, they go off and write books, people do things, people are going to say something. So, for me, there's always the twin avenues of reality and disinformation. Either there's information there that is, interesting and pertinent, and we should know it, and I'd like to know it, or it's disinformation, and merely creating the enigma is enough for whatever. It's one or the other, because once you classify things, once you remove the ability for the public at large to do FISAs, and you create what's the word I'm looking for? Not importance, obviously importance, but there is urgency there. That's what it is. There's urgency there. You only do that if it's national security. So it's like, well, what? Wait. If there's no green men, and again, these are different conversations here. If there's no flying green men, then why the national security? Okay, it's not flying green men, it's something earthbound. Okay, why the national security? Now I'm really worried. You're telling me that a person has created technology that's capable of doing some of the shit that we're seeing? Here's the thing. You're not denying that we're seeing the shit. What you're doing is saying, well, yeah, it's there. I don't know what to tell you. And see, that is not a viable answer for me. That's never been a viable answer for me. You can't tell me that what I'm seeing is there and then kind of suggest that you have an answer or some information and then just not withhold it. But anyway, enough of my tangent. Again, the headline from Insider: a former intelligence official says an upcoming government report will detail difficult to explain UFO sightings. A former intelligence official said the government is preparing to release a report on UFOs. The report will detail UFO sightings. Former National Intelligence Director Radcliffe said many of the sightings are difficult to explain, speaking to Fox News' Maria Bartiromo. This article was dated March 21st, so not too long ago. Excuse me. A top intelligence official under former President Donald Trump said on Friday that the government plans to release a report declassifying numerous UFO sightings. There are a lot more sightings that have been made public, he says. Some of those have been declassified, and when we talk about sightings, we are talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots, have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain. Probably drones. Movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. Radcliffe remarks come months after the Pentagon released 3 videos of unidentified aerial phenomena, more commonly referred to as UFOs, now UAPs, after years of speculation. The videos, captured on Navy aircraft cameras with infrared targeting systems, show black shapes floating and sometimes accelerating at incredible speeds against the wind as baffled pilots watch. Former Senator Harry Reid, who funneled $22 million into the government's investigations, said in a tweet that the Pentagon's release of the videos only scratches the surface of what they have on file. The U.S. needs to take a serious scientific look at this and any potential national security implications. The American people deserve to be informed, he said. Radcliffe said Friday there have been reports of sightings all over the world. When we talk about sightings, the other thing I will tell you is it's not just a pilot or a satellite or some intelligence collection. Usually we have multiple sensors that are picking up these things, and so again, some of these are just unexplained phenomena. And there's actually quite a few more that have been made public. Radcliffe also added that intelligence officials try to look for a plausible explanation behind all unidentified flying aircraft. But sometimes, he said, officials aren't able to justify their presence. Weather can cause disturbances, visual disturbances, right? Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realize. There are instances where we don't have good explanations for some of the things that we have seen. The Pentagon is expected to release the report by June 1st. The Department of Defense did not immediately return insiders' request for comment. No, let me stop. Yeah, so it's the thing for me. I will have to check this off because the Trump said that he wanted, just like with the JFK files, he tried to release the whole batch. Then the CIA and NSA were like, no, there's national security issues. So he released part of it, was supposed to release the next part of it, didn't get reelected, so then that's in the toilet. We're not even hearing talks of that. I almost want, you know what? Yeah. Just like with the JFK files, he said he was going to, try to declassify and get stuff released about UFOs and unidentified aerial phenomena. And I just looked it up. So let's just read it. Yeah, we're going to take the JFK twist now. So blah, 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 on April 26th, in compliance with the deadline set by Trump last October, the National Archives released documents on the assassination. Instead of a full reveal, however, some material will still be kept from the public due to identifiable national security, law enforcement, and foreign affairs concerns. I'm not sure how that is, seeing as how just like it freaked out for a second. I'm not sure how there's national security concerns there, seeing as how most of the people involved in one way or another, they're all dead. But fine. The president said he was ordering agencies to re-review each of the redactions over the next 3 years. There's a bunch of redactions. And set a deadline for further release of the documents, October 26th of this year. So we will see if that holds, okay? Because in 2017, 2,800 files were made public about the murder for the first time, bringing to the fore revelations that an alleged Cuban intelligence officer met Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico City and praised his shooting ability, and that the Soviet spy agency KGB believed that then Vice President LBJ might have conspired to kill Kennedy. But let us not take a trip down that rabbit hole. That's from the History Channel, by the way. This is the historychannel.com. Shout out History Channel. So there's a lot of interesting information, archival information that I've had a fascination about. Archival information with a deep fascination anyway. You should check out my channel, the Chronaxial Archives. Chronaxial. Chronaxial. Right? N-A-X-A. Chronaxial. Like the chrono, time, and axis, the axis of time, space and time. Anyway, it's deep with documentaries, archival information, and footage, footage from that time and era that I've siphoned off of a plethora of other channels. Everything from the JFK assassination, the Martin Luther King assassination, to the Challenger explosion, to the World Trade Center, the bombing, blah, blah, blah. You should watch it. You should get to it while it's still able to be viewed on YouTube, because, there have been plenty of educational and archival and historical footage taken off due to sweeps. Yeah, and it's that simple. But let us come back to reality. Well, let us come back to the present, at least, because someone other than us has come back to reality. Sidney Powell, who's being sued for like $1.some billion. I would say anything if I were being sued for $1.8 billion. That isn't to say that she is not a kook. She is a kook that came with no credibility and no credible evidence, and categorically insulted the legal process that was due her by the Constitution. Now understand, The route that she used was legally available and was designed and built into and structured into everything. However, the way she went about it was asinine, and she made a fool of herself, and thus made a fool of the avenue of challenging election results, of challenging the election process, of challenging the electoral process by which the results were calculated. That's what I mean. Be targeted. I keep going back to the American Services Operations Group report, the ASOG report, that talked about the Dominion systems in Michigan. We talked about the guy. Hold on. Yeah, we talked about the guy here in Oakland, Michigan. Oakland, Michigan, yes. Where he went to sleep a loser, woke up a winner. Fixed computer glitch turns losing Republican into a winner in Oakland City. Right? Or computer error led election officials in Oakland County, yes, Oakland County, to hand an upset victory Wednesday to a Democrat, only to switch it back to the incumbent Republican a day later who actually won. Now, I'll give you one guess as to the election systems, the electronic systems that they were using. Dominion, right? Well, I guess the point was for me not to tell you. Anyway, the point I'm trying to get to is, like, there are things to look at, right? But because she was grandiose and verbose and broad and generalizing and just just hyperbolizing and just categorically a nut job, no one now takes the capacity of challenging seriously, even though Democrats have challenged every Republican every Republican winner every election for the last 30 years. Like, they do it to each other. It's a common thing. It is because Trump is Trump, and it is because how he went about it. I mean, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell is probably the worst way to go about it, that we now sit in the position that we do, as far as the opportunity and the capability to utilize a constitutionally endowed avenue of challenging or seeking to challenge, the electoral process by which results were gathered, or the results themselves. Listen, if there were no legal avenue there, they would not be able to legally do it. I don't know how many times I gotta fucking say that. So anyway, Vox writes, Sidney Powell and its NewsGuard certified. See, guys, I got my NewsGuard. Sidney Powell gives up the game, admits Trump's election conspiracies weren't actually factual. In response to Dominion's defamation lawsuit, Powell's lawyers say responsible people wouldn't buy her claims. And responsible people didn't. That's why they were all thrown out. Don't you see? The system worked. Hey, we came to this conclusion about the election. Hey, I think those results are fraudulent. Okay, come into this room with me. We're going to have these people here watch over the proceedings. Here we are at the proceedings. All right, go ahead. Tell me why you think that they're fraudulent. All right, well, I think this, that, and this. All right, you didn't really say anything. You just said that you think they're fraudulent, but that's okay. That's your statement. You can now provide evidence to back up your statement as to why you think they're fraudulent. That why being that you think they're fraudulent because you believe them to be fraudulent. Oh, well, my evidence, it's coming. All right. Well, I suppose we can postpone this. And it's just, okay, well, we're going to have to throw this out. And it's just like a domino effect, waiting on her to present something that she obviously did not have. Let's read. As a former Trump campaign lawyer, Sidney Powell did more than perhaps anyone to push the big lie that Joe Biden's victory over Trump over November's presidential election was the fraud. All right. I should have remembered how Vox reads. Now, however, lawyers representing her have not acknowledged that the big lie is in fact just that. Powell faces a $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit from Dominion because of her false claims, and on Monday her lawyers offered a defense that no reasonable person would conclude that the statements Powell made about the election fraud were statements of true fact. Indeed, plaintiffs themselves characterized the statements at issue as wild accusations and outlandish claims. They are repeatedly labeled inherently improbable and even impossible, Powell's lawyers add. Such characterizations of the allegedly defamatory statements further support defendants' position that reasonable people would not accept such statements as fact, but view them only as claims that await testing by the courts through the adversary process. The irony is that it is through the adversary process by which she landed in the courtrooms challenging challenging the results, right? And it is now the adversary. I mean, here's the. Oh my God! All right. So and by the way, we run under the guise of guilty. I'm sorry, innocent until proven guilty. I'm black, so I just immediately think guilty and proven. I'm just kidding. So we run under the idea of innocent until proven guilty. You come out and say that I am a co-conspirator or even am the perpetrator of fraud regarding an election. All right. Well, since I'm innocent until proven guilty, you want to tell me how I am? There you go. So when you say, well, we thought that her claims were going to be like disseminated and broken down by the adversary process, it's like, wait a minute, I think you have this backwards. I think when she claimed fraud and pointed out that an allegedly guilty party, when she made an allegation of a claim of fraud being perpetrated by a party allegedly, it is not up to the party that is being accused to provide their innocence. It is up to them. I'm sorry, excuse me. What the fuck is that? It is up to the accuser to provide evidence to the accusation. I mean, you really are like stretching it. Let's continue reading. That's just hilarious. Such characterizations of the allegedly defamatory statements further support defendant's position that reasonable people would not accept such statements as fact, but view them only as claims until they get tested by the courts. What? It's not how this works. All right. So indeed, Powell's conspiracy theories were wild and outlandish. During an infamous November 19 news conference, for instance, she asserted that there was a globalist conspiracy to take down Trump, probably involving the late Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez, and asserted that in the middle of the night, after they've supposedly stopped counting, that's when the Dominion operators went in and injected votes and changed the system. Oh, it is always your madness that will bring you down. There was just one problem for Powell. She was never able to produce a shred of evidence. And we can just leave it there. Dun, dun, dun. So latest indictment says Ghislaine, I think it's Ghislaine Maxwell groomed girl as young as 14 for Epstein abuse. Every last bit of anything they put out, I covered just briefly. I know there's no need. It's like that headline kind of just that sums it up. At the top of the show, I talked about monsters, right? I talked about monsters because they come in many shapes and sizes, and the dark does fascinate me. And to try and understand the inner workings of power, right? You're someone who's reading and understanding about politics, beltway politics, the inner machinations, the wheeling and dealing, the power struggle. And then you realize, okay, well, most of it has to do with money, and then you see how the money works and how it flows in and out of the institutions. It goes to the market, comes out of the market, goes abroad, goes to the broad markets, comes back and cycles through. And then you find out that there's independent whales and players that are part of both the political arena in one way or the other, whether it be directly or through the revolving door, whether they know someone through proxy, or they, etc., or they come from the financial institutions or the institutions that directly benefit from financial institutions. So you have things like the market and market players, and then you have things like bankers, and you have things like lobbyists, and then you have the corporate executives, right, and that sort of ranging. And then you find out that these guys, they have proclivities. Like they all it's all interworking, and they're all people. So on top of having these executive captains of industry, profit-driven lives, they're also people with ideas and proclivities and darkness. And it's like that same shark mentality that allows them to be successful, albeit misanthropic in their fields, independent. Because most of the fields I mentioned between politics and banking and lobbying, those are all just like antisocial, misanthropic occupations. You're not a person. I'm sorry. I can't find someone who, as a lobbyist, goes and tries to I don't know. It goes in like the revolving door of politics, right? You come out of the defense industry, like the new defense secretary. You come out of Raytheon to be the SecDef, and all of a sudden we're increasing our footprint in the Middle East, right? You are a lobbyist. You represent a company that has pharmaceutical runoff that poisons a town, right? Like these are not reputable. I mean, they're reputable amongst their peers, but they're not reputable amongst fellow humans. Uh, so I digress, but it just fascinates me to see the inner workings of like the dark echelon. That's what it is. It's the dark echelons of humanity, and it just so happens the dark echelons are also the darkest are also the highest echelons. Yes. So now we go down the COVID rabbit hole. CDC chief warns of impending doom as COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and deaths all rise. Now, deep breath. The thing about this, right? I have always been an advocate of looking at the situation realistically, taking into consideration the statistics of ICU admissions, of the symptomatic expression, right? Because at one point you got the virus and it was very similar to like a severe flu. Then during the summer we had upper respiratory infections and kids started getting it, and etc. It's mutating, and now it's more contagious, and we have the B117 variety, the UK variant, etc. Now I'm not an epidemiologist or virologist. I'm just a nerd with a lot of time, and I read the same stuff is being repeated to me over and over. So whatever. That being said, I also know that simply because the vaccine has arrived and everybody's going to be able to get a vaccine, this whole idea of everything going full green, 200% go, isn't necessarily helpful, especially when we had just gotten collectively, seemingly, our numbers, give or take a bit, back to almost where they were in March of 2020, almost a year ago, or over a year ago now, because we're at the end of March. I was going to I think I have... one of the things I was going to bring up here, COVID-19 statistics hit new low in New York State. Does that mean New York State needs to go full throttle green open? No. And by the way, I do like that the first sentence, and this is the CNY homepage, so we'll say regional news, regional local. In New York, ICU patients dropped to 877, a new low since December 6th, and a 46% decline from the post-holiday peak. Intubations also dropped to 530, a new low since December 8th, and a 49% decline from the post-holiday peak. It is important to note that that what's being reported is like people get tested for COVID, asymptomatic COVID, you're positive for COVID, and they could hold you overnight, which then is a positive statistic for hospitalization. There's very little dissemination because there's an overwhelming amount of data coming in still. And the thing is like, even though we're to a point where we are used to the amount of data that's being utilized right now, that doesn't mean it still isn't overwhelming. And there's just it's amazing now. And so now, of course, I mentioned this ages ago, but we no longer have a specific flu statistic. It is now the pneumonia, influenza, and I think it's the PIC statistic, the pneumonia, influenza, and coronavirus statistic. They've all been dumped into one because it's very difficult to kind of disseminate what kind of coronavirus. Is it the flu? Again, I'm not an epidemiologist or virologist, but that from what I've read and what I've taken into consideration, that they've done that because that's the case. That being said, let's read from Forbes. The director of the CDC said Monday she feels a recurring sense of impending doom as the U.S. appears to potentially head toward a fourth surge in cases, expressing concern about the country's trajectory even amid scaled-up vaccinations and good news about COVID-19 vaccines' ability to effectively protect against the disease. The U.S. is now recording a 7-day average of slightly less than 60,000 cases, which is a 10% increase over the previous 7 days. COVID-19 related hospitalizations and deaths are also increasing, with deaths, which had previously remained stable, now rising by 2.6 over the last week to a 7-day average of 968 deaths. We have so much to look forward to and so much reason for hope, but right now I'm scared, she says. She also said the trajectory for the U.S. right now appears to be in line with European countries like Germany, Italy, and France, where cases are now surging, though she noted we are not powerless and can change this trajectory of the pandemic by following public health measures like mask wearing and social distancing. Both she, Walensky, and Dr. Fauci both suggested the new increase in cases is likely tied to states dropping restrictions and reopening at levels we wouldn't necessarily recommend, as well as the continued spread of the virus variants at an uptick in travel. The CDC chief said she would be speaking with governors Tuesday and try to persuade them to refrain from opening up too fast. It really is as simple as that. It's like, hold off just a little longer, even though, again, the I think it was a knee-jerk reaction to begin with. If you don't get the desired results, the government will still continue to exercise themselves as they have. Like, what do you think happens if the uptick overtakes the vaccination campaign in your particular state? You're just going to have to fucking lock down again. Do you not see that as a possibility? Whatever. New York is on the right track. They've expanded their vaccine access and announced a timeline for universal eligibility. Governor Cuomo, let me zoom this in here. Governor Cuomo announced the news on Monday, saying the new criteria goes in effect on Tuesday. So tomorrow, New York, they're expanding their eligibility, as I was talking about, to those 30 and older. So I'll finally be able to get it, and I'm not going to get it. He says starting April 6th, the universal eligibility will go into full effect for all New Yorkers 16 years and older. Nice. Today, we take a monumental step forward and yada, yada, yada. I'm just waiting for this dude to get out of office. I'm just waiting for him to leave office. Just go. Let's see here. I might actually make it through the show. Pfizer, Moderna vaccines stop infections in real-world study. I was interested to read this. CDC report suggests shots cut transmission, not just illnesses. That's important for those who get vaccinated and then don't want to wear the mask, period. And this is something they've been really flaky on. It's very simple. When you are vaccinated, are you still a carrier? Are you still contagious? Can you still transmit it? Because the whole thing, as far as I know, is like, okay, so if I've been vaccinated for the flu, my body will develop the antibodies to fight the flu so that I won't have it. But I guess the suggestion then is in that period in which I'm fighting the flu and not like being affected by it, not being symptomatic, I can transmit it. Again, not a virologist, not an epidemiologist. But the study looked at about 4,000 early recipients of the vaccine. COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna effectively prevented the infection, not just illness, with substantial protection evident 2 weeks after the first dose. Okay, so you get the dose. I see. Okay, so 2 doses of the vaccine provided as much as 90% protection against infection, according to the CDC. Earlier clinical trials had established that the shot also prevented illness, hospitalizations, and death. So it's one thing to be infected because, again, the symptomatic expression, which is the illness, which leads to hospitalization and death, and it leads to what do they call it? Opportunistic viruses. The study adds to evidence that the new vaccines made with messenger RNA technology actually reduce the spread of the virus in real-world conditions. An earlier study in Israel found a single dose of the Pfizer vaccine reduced infections by as much as 85%. The study is tremendously encouraging, and new findings underscore the importance of getting both the recommended doses of the vaccine in order to get the greatest level of protection against COVID-19, especially as our concerns about variants escalate. While the research bodes well for halting the spread of the virus, and speeding economic recovery, health officials remain concerned. Cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are rising, etc., etc. Biden announces 90% of adults to be eligible for a vaccine by April 19th. Which is so that kind of negates Cuomo. Okay, so Cuomo April 19th. So New Yorkers ages 16 and older will be April 6th, and then on April 19th, 90% of U.S. adults via Biden. It's just everything that Cuomo was doing, starting with opening up the theaters and the parks and stuff. Everything is just like it's all theater. I'm sorry. I just had to point that out. Biden announced Monday that 90% of adults will be eligible for the vaccine and will have a vaccination site within 5 miles where they live by April 19th, while also warning Americans not to let down their guard. That's about it. I mentioned the COVID-19 statistic. It's a really good thing. It's a really good thing. Um, yeah. Uh, I just found this. It's just like it's not just QAnon. Democrats and independents also want to recall California's governor. Everyone hates Gavin Newsom. Um, we're gonna call it short. I wanted to just like I'm gonna ease myself into it. We're gonna get this done right. But we actually covered a whole show today, guys. I'm gonna keep trying to sharpen the system because I just trying to go at it with 40 articles a day is just not working, especially with all the yapping that I do. But with that being said, I do appreciate all of you who listen and subscribe and view. You guys are awesome. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe. Smash that like button. Yeah, I'm gonna keep trying to do it better. Keep trying to do it better, not bigger. Keep trying to do it better. Be well to yourself and to each other. Take care.